for coming and also listening to this on our YouTube channel, chapter 10 of our Lotus Sutra study program. And this is about teachers of the Dharma. So there's a couple of Easter eggs hidden throughout this presentation. This Chidi is a former ethics and philosophy teacher, and he has some wonderful words of wisdom that come across in his in the TV show. So part of understanding Lotus Sutra is to think about who is Shakyamuni preaching to, or who is talking, and what is going on around them at the time. So who appears in this chapter is Medicine King Bodhisattva, and we'll talk about more about him. Also, several times in the early parts of this, and we actually did this passage in our Gongyo service earlier, is Shakyamuni really emphasizes a single moment of joy. And we've talked about this a couple of times, and this is very, very important. This idea of really embracing the moment, being fully liberated and fully engaged and joyful in the immediate moment of creation that's going on right now. And that's the key of our whole practice, is taking that stance. Also, what we find out in chapter 10 is that wherever we practice, we are always in the presence of the Buddha. So wherever you are, wherever you're reading, reciting, keeping, receiving, copying, etc., the Buddha is there with us. In this chapter, it's all about teachers, and we learn that we are all teachers of the Dharma. We learn that teaching is healing and transformational for us and for other people, and that teaching gives us meaning and purpose in our life. And this is very important for us to live a happy life, a fulfilled life, is that we need meaning and purpose in doing that. And teaching others is how we do that. And this is what chapter 10 is talking about. There are 3 requisites for teaching. This is what we just chanted. This is the, entering the abode of the Tathagata, wearing the robe of the Tathagata, and sitting on the seat of the Tathagata. And we come from that perspective when we teach. There's the 5 practices. This is brought out for the first time in the Lotus Sutra. Okay, so this is great. What are our practices supposed to be? There are 5 of them. We'll talk about that. And then there's a parable, which isn't really counted as a parable by the scholars over time. I don't know why not, because it's a great parable. It's the idea of digging a well. We'll talk about that. And then we're presented with this idea: when we take this single moment of joy, we receive the seed of Buddhahood, and being grateful for that. And then also in this chapter, it starts to come out that the Lotus Sutra is super difficult to believe and to practice. And Nichiren in his Gosho mentions this over 50 different times about how hard it is to practice the Lotus Sutra. So moving on, who is Bodhisattva Medicine King, and why is he so important and for us to think about? First of all, Medicine King represents the healing power of the Dharma. And he vowed to cure anyone from the 3 illnesses of greed, hatred, and delusion, which of course are the 3 principal causes of suffering in this life. He appears for the first time in chapter 10, which is what we're studying today, the teacher of the Dharma. And Shakyamuni is directing his sermon to him. And again, contextually, why is this important? Well, Medicine King represents the healing power of the Dharma. So when Shakyamuni is talking about teaching, he means that teaching is healing and teaching is transformational, not only for others, but it's well for ourselves. And of course, Nichiren mentions this all frequently, is that we need faith, practice, and study, not only for ourselves, but do our best to teach others. So it's a pretty recurring theme. This goes back to what Mahayana Buddhism is all about in general, is that we are not only concerned with our own enlightenment and our own nirvana, but we are also committed and vowed that we're going to stay around and come back again and again until everybody else is healed as well. In chapter 13, he reappears along with 80,000 other folks, and he vows to teach the Lotus Sutra after Shakyamuni Buddha's passing. So he's committed to sticking around, and he's around. And in chapter 23, there's a whole chapter dedicated to him and to his previous life, and it tells the story where he sets his own body on fire and then miraculously restores it. And he does that through the power of his merits and virtues and wisdom that he's accumulated by teaching and promoting in the Lotus Sutra. So it symbolizes two things. One is his burning zeal, which is this passion, this bodhicitta, to not only attain his own awakening, but to help save other people. And this is symbolized in this story, this parable, where he offers his arms, which are represent his deeds, his actions in life, how he lives his life, and his body, his life, for the sake of the Dharma. And burning zeal, so that's why you have this metaphor of fire. And then for the sake of the Dharma, the healing power of the Dharma. So these are the two sort of meanings of this previous life story of Medicine King. And now I just happen to like this story or this picture because he looks like Gandalf the White in the Lord of the Rings. So you guys know it's one of my favorite books. So that's why I picked this picture of Bodhisattva. Now, Bodhisattva Medicine King appears on our 10 Worlds calligraphic mandala. Nichiren Daishonin inscribed him. The Japanese name for Bodhisattva Medicine King is Yakuo, and he appears where the red circle is and the highlight. So that's where he is on your Gohonzon. So when you're home chanting and you're feeling ill, either mentally or physically or emotionally, you can rest your gaze on Medicine King Bodhisattva and think about healing and transformation, and those powers will flow to you. Interestingly enough, Jiri, who is also known as Tentai, who founded Tendai, is considered a reincarnation or manifestation of Medicine King Bodhisattva. And the stories go that Jiri attained awakening while reading chapter 23. So healing power of the Bodhisattva Medicine King is the most important thing. And why is Shakyamuni teaching him or speaking to him in this chapter is because teaching is part of healing. Again, not only for others, but for ourselves.
Mark, I just remembered that Nichiren's childhood name was Yakuo Moro. So he was named after that bodhisattva as a child.
Thank you. I did not know that.
I don't know why it didn't occur to me before. I just remembered it. Yeah. It's okay.
Too late to add it to the slide, but
yeah,
that's great. So again, single moment of joy, and Nichiren speaks about this a lot in his Gosho. He speaks a lot in the Ongi Kuden, the orally transmitted teachings. Shakyamuni mentions this, I think, 3 or 4 times in chapter 10, how important this is. And what is this really telling us is that we take joy in the realization of the reality of life. And what is that? So Shoho Jiso, the reality of life, we chant that in chapter 2. What is Shoho Jiso? It's Ichinen Sanzen, the 3,000 realms in a single, 3,000 realms in a single thought moment. And also mutual possession of the 10 worlds. So all 10 worlds include all the other 9 in it. And these are, this was actually the mutual possession of 10 worlds is one of Nichiren's key focuses in his ministry, is that this is really important. A quote from chapter 10 about the power of this realization and what it accomplishes for us is that they will possess the power of great faith, the power of resolute vows, and the power of many roots of goodness. And I wanted to emphasize this because how does this manifest itself? It manifests in daily life, where we have, through our daimoku, through our single moment of joy and this reality of life that we live in, we develop this power. It's one of the it's one of the 7 virtues that we get when we chant. And when we did the daimoku meditation several weeks ago, we talked about at the end that the visualization was my lotus flower is virtuous, my lotus flower is wise, my lotus flower is powerful. This is speaking directly to your lotus flower is powerful, meaning you have the power to control your mind, your emotions, your body, and your environment, the 4 foundations of mindfulness. This is the power that you get from your practice and through your sympathetic joy to the world. So all phenomena are Ichinen Sanzen. And when we're fully immersed and engaged, and this is a circle back to this teacher idea, is everything we go through, every time we interact with anybody, every experience we have is a learning moment for us. And so all of these, 3,000 moments in a single thought moment become our teacher. So this is, of course, a quote from I don't know who have some movie or something like Bill Murray or something, but wherever you go, there you are. A little bit of a play on words, but this idea of two Buddhas, Shakyamuni and many treasures, and the stupa with Nammyohorengekyo, the Dharma in it, and then let me close this window so I can see. It's a lot going on.
Oh, it's The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai.
Oh, thank you, man. You have such a memory. Yeah, that's a super good movie, by the way. If you guys haven't,
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
one of my favorites. So again, this is a quote from chapter 10. Is that Medicine King? In every place where this sutra is taught, read, recited, or copied, or its volumes are kept, a most tall, spacious, and splendid stupa of the precious seven is to be built. But there is no need to enshrine in it any relics of the Buddha. Why is this? It already contains the entire body of the Buddha. So the Buddha is everywhere you are, wherever you practice, wherever you are. When you sit in front of your Gohonzon, you are with the Buddha already. And that's a very sort of powerful thing. Gives me great comfort and hope and joy. And of course, Yui Butsu Yo Butsu, it's that life is this interaction between things, the provisionality of life. Every, thing, being, occurrence is this manifestation through causes and conditions. And when the causes and the conditions are sufficient, things manifest. And it's this bubbling up, this upwelling of creativity that exists between things. And because of the provisionality of life, it tells us that we're all interdependent. We're all part of this beautiful sort of experience of life. So that's what this is telling us. And then this is from the Ongi Kuden on page 83. Nichiren says, now Nichiren and his followers who chant Nammyohorengekyo are persons who lodge in the same place as the thus come one. And he quotes from a Chinese monk, Fu Ta Shi, who says in his commentary, morning after morning, we rise up with the Buddha. Evening after evening, we lie down with the Buddha. Moment by moment, we attain the way. Moment by moment, we reveal our true identity. It's just a beautiful passage. This is a Easter egg for our sister Myokai. Myokai, I figured you'd love this picture because I know you love these incredible cosmic kind of images.
Thank you.
We're all teachers of the Dharma, and that's a pretty amazing thing to think about. And I briefly will share that this has been the most challenging aspect of me being Michael's student and learning how to be a teacher. Is I can tell you right now unequivocally, I am not enlightened. I am not awakened. And there are times when I feel so hypocritical to sit here and teach you or share with you thoughts on the Lotus Sutra or lead a Shodaigyo session or answer questions, because I feel like, wow, who am I? I still suffer from anger and from depression and from anxiety and whatever. And like, I don't feel like I'm a shining example of a bodhisattva, let alone, an awakened being. And I have to keep telling myself that I'm a work in process, just like everybody else. And part of my journey is endeavoring in my personal practice. And part of that is we are all teachers, no matter how good or not good we think we are. Part of our journey is helping others to, lift the world up. The expression is a rising tide floats all boats. And if we somehow feel like we're not good and we can't do this, and so we're just gonna, we're embarrassed, or, like I said, I feel like a hypocrite sometimes. I'm embarrassed, and if we wait until we're ready, we'll be dead. Life will have passed us by. Kind of a joke, when I was first dating my wife, at the time girlfriend, and I said, well, let's get married. She goes, I'm not ready to get married. And like we were talking, it's like, well, you're never ready to get married. Let's have a kid. Well, I'm not ready to have a kid. Well, we're never ready to have a kid. But 45 years later, we're still together. We have a 30-year-old son. He's doing great. Um, it's like, Sweet Leanne, you like to run. If I wasn't a runner and I said, I want to do a marathon, that'd be like laughable. And I could just easily say, that's too hard. I'm never going to do it. So I'm just going to sit on my couch and think about being a runner. But if I start off with, okay, well, there's a great little app called Couch to 5K where it takes you through, I think it's a 26-week process of being able to run 5K. And it starts off with you walk a little bit, you run for 30 seconds, you walk a little bit, you run for 30 seconds, you walk a little bit, you run for a minute, and then those sessions, those segments of running get longer and the walking gets shorter, and you just build up to it. And the same thing with us as teachers. Don't wait until you're ready, because you're never going to be ready. And don't wait till you're pure, because you're probably not going to be pure living in this world. Just go for it, man. Just go for it. So let me be your example, if nothing else, because I'm a flawed son of a gun. That's all I can tell you. So bodhisattvas are role models. That's who really cultivate through their practice the 6 perfections of generosity, morality, patience, energy, meditation, and wisdom. And this is again from chapter 10, filled with heartfelt loving kindness for all living beings. We, all of us on this call, have vowed to be born now among us in order to widely proclaim and clearly expound the wondrous Dharma Flower Sutra. And sometimes I think about this and I go, did I really sign up for this? For Donald Trump and COVID and global warming and all this crap? Really? This is horrible. It's like, well, maybe I did, maybe I did, or maybe it's all metaphorical, that even in spite of all this crazy stuff, life is okay. Life can be wonderful. Life can be joyous. And let's keep pushing for that. Let's be a light in the darkness. So sometimes I think about it. And just to emphasize, all of the philosophers that I've read and ministers of different faiths and psychologists, they all talk about living a fulfilled life means creating value in your life and having a meaning and a purpose, so that when you wake up in the morning, you're not just like going, oh, what am I gonna do today? I'm just like gonna just die today. I'm just like depressed or whatever. Like, no, if you have a goal, you can drive toward that goal. Meaning and purpose is so important. So teaching is one of the ways that we can give our lives meaning, and we can view ourselves as an ambassador of the Buddha, an emissary of the Buddha. It gives us a really powerful mission. And it allows us to flip our perspective from being a victim mentality, like, oh man, all these bad things are happening to me. Why did it happen? What happened? What am I going to do? To flip it to like, there are difficulties in life. And through my practice, I will develop the power over my mind, my emotions, my body, my environment. I will develop that power to bring joy to people. And teaching is a way to do that. So looking at ourselves as we are ambassadors of the Buddha, it helps us flip from this victim mentality to one of empowerment. And perhaps you'll remember from earlier in our studies, this parable of the wealthy man and the poor son. The poor son thought he was not worthy, and he was scared. And so he wanted to just, clean out the manure from the stalls. That's all he felt like he was worthwhile. But through his practice and the compassion of his father, he realized, wow, I did inherit this great, I do have the seed of Buddhahood in myself. So this idea of having a mission and being a teacher really gives us this meaning and purpose, and helps us flip our self-perception from one of a victim to one of empowerment. This is all happening, and this is what really underlies this all of this chapter 10. So Chidi says, we are all teachers. And the sutra chapter 10 again says, don't say that, Ananda. Don't say that. Admirable friendship, companionship, and camaraderie is the whole of the holy life. When someone has admirable people as friends, companions, and comrades, they will develop and pursue the Eightfold Path. And I apologize, this is not from chapter 10. This is from the Upada Sutta, which is S. Michael, what does S stand
Yeah.
for again?
Oh, the Samyutta Nikaya,
Oh, thank you.
which is the connected discourses. Oh, and by the way I just noticed this, you have that set up. It's as though the Buddha is saying to Ananda, don't say that we are all teachers. But what Ananda said was that good companions, good teachers, the word Kalyana Mitra can mean good friend, and it can mean a friend in the sense of a fellow practitioner or a mentor or supporter. And Ananda said, well, these good friends are like half the holy life. And this was the Buddha's response to him, saying it was just half the holy life. You say, no, it's the whole.
Right.
He's not objecting to the idea that we are all teachers.
Thank you, Ray. Which we've heard this idea of good friends in Japanese as zen shishiki, and how it's important that we associate with good people who you know are positive influences in our life as opposed to not. And the Buddha's also a story where someone says, I'll paraphrase it, if I can't associate with good people, what should I do? And he says, well, you should just go off and be by yourself then, because being around bad people is worse than being around no people. But what it does emphasize is how important the Sangha in our community and our congregation are to each other, and how all of us support each other. And then now this is a quote from chapter 10. They expound the Dharma, they bring joy, and then whoever closely associates with these Dharma teachers will attain Buddhahood. So it's, as Rue said, friendship, companionship, and camaraderie is the entirety of a holy life, and it's so important. It's why the Sangha is one of the three treasures.
And by the way, that term, the Japanese term Zen Shishiki, is the Japanese word for the Sanskrit Kalyana Mitra. It is the same concept or idea, different words.
Thank you. So we're going to revisit this. We chanted this at the beginning, but this is what I consider this passage perhaps one of the most 5 important passages in the entire Lotus Sutra. There's a bunch in chapter 16, of course. And then, of course, you guys know how much I love Yui Butsu Yobutsu. This is another one that I think is right up there in the top 5. And you just read it with me. Medicine King, after the passing of the Tathagata, if there are good sons and good daughters who desire to teach this Dharma Flower Sutra to the 4 groups, how should they teach it? These good sons and good daughters should enter the abode of the Tathagata, put on the robe of the Tathagata, and sit on the seat of the Tathagata. Then, for the sake of the 4 groups, they should widely proclaim this sutra. The abode of the Tathagata is the great compassionate heart for all living beings. The robe of the Tathagata is the flexible and forbearing mind. The seat of the Tathagata is the emptiness of all things. So what is this? Let's dive a little deeper into abode, robe, and seat. Abode is our intention. And our intention is to live in the 4 divine abodes: loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. We've been practicing this a lot, of course, in our Shodaigyo classes. If you think about this as simply mental muscles, and that Shodaigyo is for our mind what going to the gym is for our body, these are muscles that you have to develop. And again, to go back to the idea of, I want to run a marathon and I've never run before. Well, you're going to hurt yourself if you actually go out and try and run a marathon. I can guarantee you, A, you won't finish, and B, you're going to hurt yourself. And then you're probably 3, never going to want to run again. So if you start slow and build up, these are the same things. To enter the abode of the Tathagata takes practice. That's why we chant every day. And we start small and we build up, and we build these mental muscles of loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. The robe is our practice. So when we wear the robe of the Tathagata, we are endeavoring to be kind, gentle, forbearing, and patient. And this is a shout out to Brother John Martyr, who we talked about this last Thursday, um, one of his favorite passages from chapter 16, mine too, is Shichijiki I Niu Nan, meaning are upright in character and gentle and flexible in mind. And this is our practice. These are how we express and develop loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. Our intention is for that. Our practice is to embody that. And that's wearing the robe. So our mind and our body going out into the world, the seat of the Tathagata is mindfulness, and mindfulness about body, feelings, mind, and phenomena, the four foundations of mindfulness, and insight into the true nature of reality, shoho jiso, we talked about that earlier, that we have this insight, vipassana, we have the insight into the true nature of reality as it is, without preconceptions and prejudice, any clinging or aversions to that. And so let's dive even deeper into what that seat looks like. Ichinen Sanzen, the 3,000 realms in a single thought moment. It encompasses everything. And then the mutual possession of the 10 worlds. All 10 worlds have the other 9 within them as a whole. And a little deeper in, of course, the seat means the 3 truths, the middle way, emptiness and provisionality, the 3 great secret laws, the Gohonzon, the Odaimoku, and the Kaidan. And then, of course, the 3 treasures, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Now, there's a loose correlation between these. So the middle way is the Gohonzon and the Buddha, and emptiness is the Odaimoku and Dharma. And it's not perfect, so don't really think about it, this slide that way. But it shows us that being mindful into the true nature of reality is that reality is Ichinen Sanzen. And our existence is mutual possession of the 10 worlds. And this is expressed through the 3 truths. And how do we worship that? It's the 3 great secret laws. And who supports us? It's the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. So they all kind of come together into this mindfulness of the seat of the Tathagata. And when I put my robes on every day, there's a saying that great is the robe of liberation, an inconceivable field of merit. Uh, why do I always forget when I'm doing it? Michael, help me.
I do that all the time too. How great the robe of liberation and incomparable field of merit, wearing it, take on Buddha's conduct, thereby saving all sentient beings.
Yes. Yeah. Wearing it, taking on Buddha's conduct, taking on being like Bodhisattva Medicine King. And then I add my own little spin, because you guys know I love to do my own little spin to stuff, is I holding my kesa, I hold it to my forehead and I say, I enter the abode of the Tathagata. And I take a moment to say, that means loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. And then I hold it on my heart and I say, I wear the robe of the Tathagata. This is my practice to be kind and gentle and patient. And then I take my hand and like the mudra for the earth touching mudra, when I touch the earth and I say, and I sit on the seat of the Tathagata. And then I do Daimoku, Nammyohorengekyo, Nammyohorengekyo, Nammyohorengekyo. So I do this as my way of sort of just my little ritual of getting into the right frame of reference, that now I'm actually in front of the Buddha. I'm in the presence of the Buddha right now. And chapter 16 says this, he's always here. He, she, whatever it is that, they're always here. All you got to do is open yourself to it. And when you're open yourself to it, it's all there. You see it in the reality.
That's really brilliant, by the way. I like that.
Thank you, Sensei. So, what are the 5 practices? Receiving and keeping is called the intensive practice, and it's the most important. It's Namu, faith and commitment, faith, practice, and study. Receiving is deep trust and confidence in the Buddhist teachings, and keeping is our regular practice, our gongyo. Gongyo means assiduous practice. So we have deep trust and confidence in the Dharma, Namu, and we do it every day, and that's our regular practice. And Nichiren wrote in the Nichi Ninyo Gozen Gohenji, quote, embracing the Lotus Sutra and chanting Nammyohorengekyo at once encompasses all the 5 practices. And this is a shout out to our brother John Crossland, also in England. John's not here today. He can't make this time. He comes on Thursdays, but I know he's going to watch this. So John, this is for you, because you actually talked about this last Thursday. And I promised you I would somehow tie this all back together again, that for Nichiren, the most important thing was chanting Nammyohorengekyo. And that is why we're Nichiren Buddhists. If it starts there, but it permeates all the rest of our life. It's this idea of receiving and keeping. And it's not just chanting Nammyohorengekyo, because you can do that in a mindless, non-mindful way, and it won't really have the same effect in your life. So being mindful, as we just talked about in this last slide, being the intention and the practice and the mindfulness, when you approach it that way, and then you have this single moment of joy while you're chanting, that's when this all comes together and provides you this great benefit of power, where you have power over your mind, emotions, and body and the environment around you. And then the other four are called the assisting practices. Reading, which is reading aloud and silently. It can also mean hearing someone else read to you. And it can also mean practicing with your whole body. And this is a shout out to Brother Brian McGuire in Connecticut, who really thought, gee, when I'm sitting in shamatha or calmness, I'm actually reading the sutra with my whole body when I'm sitting here doing that. And when I'm chanting, I'm actually reading the sutra with my whole body. And that's a really beautiful metaphor. And I loved it. So he came up with that. And I wanted to say, great job on that one. Reciting is a little different than reading. Reciting is from memory. And this really, so frequent repetition of things really starts to deeply embed it into our experience, our minds and our bodies, and it starts to encode it deeply into our brain and in our DNA, our cells. We start to really feel and live this. And it's slow, it builds up. Teaching others to the best of our ability, even if it's a single word or phrase. Copying. If you get into copying, it's wonderful. On our website, we have a couple of documents. It's in the library. Go all the way to the bottom. On the resources section, there are guides on how to do shakyo, which is copying not only the sutra, but also the daimoku. And when you sit and do it, you are doing a form of meditation that immerses you into these characters. And Nichiren writes frequently that each character of the Lotus Sutra is a golden Buddha. And now it's not just copying, though. When you are using social media in a positive way to help reach other people, and however that might be, don't have to be so overt as saying, hey, have you chanted Nammyohorengekyo? It could just be simply putting out a positive message of any kind, to feel better, to be more mindful about global warming, however you want to interact on social media. When you're pushing or putting forth these ideas of positivity and nurturing and mindfulness over social media, over an Instagram, you take a picture of a flower and you put it on your Instagram feed, or a beautiful poem or whatever it is, that's also copying. So you can use that. These are things you can do. And these 5 practices use all 3 modes of karma, which is your body, your speech, and your mind. And going back to single moment of joy, and how that allows you to unfold and then have this power of your life, that you have power over your mind, you have power over your emotions, you have power over your body, you have power over the world around you. You can make a difference. You can make the world a better place. And by gosh, we need more people who are just trying to do more positive things out there, because there's a lot of negative messages out there. So our job as teachers is to just do our best, little bit by little bit, as much as we can, using the skills that we have. We talked about this last month, our special vow. What unique qualities do we have that we can bring to the Sangha and the community, both officially, those folks like here today, and then those of our friends around us? We get into the parable of digging the well. Has anybody ever dug a well? Anybody ever dug a ditch? I got to tell you, this is probably one of the most physically demanding physical tasks that you're ever going to try and do. It is, the expression is back-breaking work. Yes. So I think this is particularly good parable about how difficult it is to practice. But it tells us to earnestly seek, have that burning zeal again, be like Medicine King, burning zeal, this passion to strive for awakening. And it requires patience, endurance, and fortitude, because it doesn't happen overnight. But as the parable says, you start off and the dirt's dry and you keep digging and digging and digging. It's really dry. And all of a sudden you start to see a little moisture. I'm like, oh, that's good, you know? And then you start to see a little bit more mud. And now you start to see this actual proof. You realize you're getting closer and closer to the water, which is why actual proof is so important. And a verse that the Buddha said in the Dhammapada, verse 122, drop by drop, a bucket is filled. So it doesn't happen overnight. It takes patience, endurance, and fortitude, and you need this burning desire to make it happen. So acceptance and patience with how difficult it is to practice the Lotus Sutra and to seek awakening. And again, Nichiren mentions this over 50 times in his Gosho about how hard it is. And this chapter 10 talks about it too. Shakyamuni declares, there are immeasurable thousands and myriads of kotis of sutras I have taught in the past, which I teach now, and which I will teach in the future. Among them, however, this Lotus Sutra is the most difficult to accept and to understand. So he's saying right up front, this is really hard, really hard. And just a quick nuance about this. This is the first time he mentions that any of the sutras where he's talking about what I taught past, present, future. Before that, it's always like, here's what I taught in the past, or here's what I'm teaching now. But he's never said this is the one that spans all eternity, all time, from all time, is the Lotus Sutra. It's the first time that he talks about this. It's kind of a bit of an advertisement for the Lotus Sutra, like, hey, this is really higher than anything else. Dengyo and the Hokke Shuku said, Shakyamuni preached Lotus Sutra in accordance with his own mind, revealing his own enlightenment. One of the reasons that the Lotus Sutra is so difficult to understand is that all the other sutras, he's using skillful means to talk about specific situations for specific people. In the Lotus Sutras, the first time he actually starts to talk about this is his enlightenment. And it's like just almost impossible. It's like I was just trying to think of a cool metaphor. I can't. Anyways, it's just like, it's just so impossible for, like for a blind man or a blind person to perceive color. Like for all of us unawakened common mortals, it's just impossible to understand, this Yui Butsu, Yo Butsu, Shohoji So moment of the eternal Buddha, the realm that exists. So it's why it's so hard to understand it. And Nichiren wrote in the Kanjin Honzon show that this insight into the mutual inclusion of the 10 realms, or more specifically, the understanding that, quote, our inferior minds are endowed with the Buddha realm among the 10 realms. The Buddha realm alone is difficult to demonstrate, but having understood that your mind is endowed with the other 9 realms, you should believe that it has the Buddha realm as well. Do not have doubts about this. And to dive into this Gosho a little bit more, he talked about when you look at someone's face and they're angry, you can tell that they're angry. And you can look in their face and see if they're anxious and depressed, you can tell that they're in hell. And if they're happy and laughing and joyful, you can tell that they're in heaven, right? You can see it on their face. And then the other 4, you can see like, oh, they're deeply scholarly, they're deeply compassionate. Through their actions, they're representing compassion of the bodhisattva to help other people. You can think about a number of different cases of people who, serving meals to the homeless. It's an act of compassion. They're in the world of bodhisattva. So Nichiren said you can see all this with your own eyes, but what you can't see is Buddhahood. And what he's saying here is, because you can see the other 9, trust me, the Buddha nature is there. So because you can see the other 9, based on what Shakyamuni is defining, that 10 is there, and 10 exists in all the other, the realm of Buddhahood exists in the other 9 worlds. So have confidence in that. Nichiren saw the difficulty of embracing the Lotus Sutra as a guarantee. He flipped the perspective. He says, gee, this is so hard, so it's gotta work. It will work. And he wrote to Shijo Kingo, to accept the Lotus Sutra is easy. to uphold it is difficult. So I can accept it, but then can I wake up every morning and do gongyo? Can I go to sleep every night and do gongyo? Can I try my best to live a good, healthy, wholesome life? Can I try my best to teach others to the best of my ability? So to uphold it is difficult. But the realization of Buddhahood so awakening lies in upholding our faith in our actions. It's the wearing the robe of the Tathagata. It's entering the abode of the Tathagata. Those who would uphold the sutra should be prepared to meet difficulties. Without doubt, though, they will quickly attain the highest Buddha path. The words of the Buddha. Can we ever truly know if Gautama Buddha, Prince Siddhartha, actually said these exact words? Can we ever know that he said these words of any sutta from the Pali Canon or sutra from the Mahayana Canon? Can we ever know? Have you ever played the memory game of telephone? I'm sure we all have as a kid, where we have a line of 10 people or 5 people, and the first person says something in this person's ear, and then they have to go to the next person and they whisper it in the next person's ear. And then the fun part is when you get to the last person, the 10th person, they say, okay, what did the first person say? It's rarely the same thing, right? And then you consider that 2,500 years have gone from when Gautama Buddha passed away and to when I'm talking to you guys right now. And think about how many ears and mouths that went through, and then consider semantic drift and the numerous translations from Sanskrit to Chinese to Japanese to English. And he's like, are we ever going to know that this is? No, we're not. We're not. So we don't need to have the Lotus Sutra held up as some completely empirical, definitive, like the folks who say the Bible, this is absolutely the word of God. I'm like, no, no, sorry. But the cool thing is that if these teachings work, then all these teachers over time, including you, who are talking to your friend about, hey, let's meditate together, John and Sui Lian, I think you guys, half the people who come to Shodaigyo were because you invited them, right? So I'm gonna take a moment and say thank you so much for that. That's incredible. So you guys, if these teachings work, then all of these teachers who came after Gautama Buddha, Prince Siddhartha, this dude who lived 2,500 years ago in northeastern India, all of these people, you speak the words of the Buddha. As is in Buddhism, there's a very, very, it's considered that if what a person says aligns with the 4 seals of the Dharma, then you can have confidence that Shakyamuni actually taught this. It's called the 4 seals of the Dharma. What are they? Impermanence, emptiness. For us, a little bit more expanded, it's the 3 truths. Suffering, the first of the 4 noble truths. Now, I do want to just take an aside here and say that I like that Buddhists have twisted themselves into pretzels for thousands of years trying to redefine suffering. And I say suffering is for sure, pain is optional, or it's not really suffering, it's unsatisfactoriness, blah, 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 blah. I prefer a different version that life has suffering, and suffering has a cause, and suffering has an end, and there's a way not to suffer, and that's to follow the Eightfold Path. And for us Nichiren Buddhists, it means to chant Nammyohorengekyo. But anyways, impermanence, the 3 truths, suffering. By the way, because life is wonderful if we flip the perspective. If we go from the victim mentality to the empowerment mentality, life is beautiful. But it has suffering in it. And there's non-self, meaning that there's no permanent existence. And that perfect peace is nirvana. And this is the single moment of joy. So if what someone's teaching is aligned with these 4 seals, then you can be confident the Buddha taught it. Rue spoke last week, I believe, about Pratyeka Buddhas, who are privately awakened Buddhas. They're enlightened. They may or may not be Buddhists. They could be Christians. They could be Muslims. They could be, from the Jewish faith. They could be Druids. It could be or anybody, right? But they could be awakened. They're privately awakened, and it just shows us that there is a common reality, a shohojiso, that everybody can be awakened to. So we don't need to be dogmatic and feel like, oh, well, only a Buddhist who chants Nammyohorengekyo is going to be able to be enlightened. And I want to tell you right now, from my perspective, I just don't think that's true. I happen to think that chanting Nammyohorengekyo is fantastic. It's a wonderful practice. But I think there's other ways up this mountain. I mean, you could sort of drum me out of the core for saying that, but that's how I feel. Meaning that we need to let go of this fetter of doctrine and dogma and having to be right and righteous, because that's going to hold you back. It's just going to hold you back. And also, we need to let go of this desire for someone else to tell us what to do, what to think, and what to feel. The whole idea is that this practice gives us these 7 virtues of wisdom and compassion, and we know for ourselves what's going on. And we use the 3 proofs, like the 4 seals, as our guide. So, just theoretically, does it make sense? Is there some documentation that's written down about it? And then does it work? So as you're digging your well, is it all dry soil all the time? All dry soil all the time? You're never going to keep doing this. But as you start to see moisture, you realize, I'm getting closer. I feel a little bit better today. I'm a little calmer today. I'm a little bit more insightful today. I didn't get quite as angry at that person as I used to. All these are just tiny little signs along the way that you are getting closer and closer and closer. Drop by drop, the bucket fills with water. And this is the punchline. We're almost done. The only way any of us will ever truly know is we have to awaken, right? Because we go back to, like, did the Buddha ever say this? Did Jesus ever say this? Did Muhammad ever say this? Did Abraham ever say this? It's a long time ago. So the only way you're going to know is to practice. And part of practicing is teaching. And you awaken on your own. And let this desire for awakening, bodhicitta, let this be your desire. Let this be your gohonzon. So where do you focus your time? Where do you provide your ultimate importance? It's like, I want to know. I want to know what's right. I want to know what's good. I want to live a healthy, wholesome life. And that's sort of the message here. So what does chapter 10 mean for us? It's a gift beyond wonder and wishing that you and me today have heard the Lotus Sutra and can chant Nammyohorengekyo. So just a great gift. We just like, wow, that's what chapter 10 is telling us. And in chapter 10 is saying, be like Medicine King. Teacher means all of us. Teaching is healing and transformational, not only for other people, but for you too. The best teachers never stop learning and being curious and inquisitive. It's hard. That's okay. We all make mistakes and struggle. It's like digging a well. Keep going. You'll get there. And that's why the community is so important. Zen Shishiki, good friends. It's the whole of the holy life. We support and care for each other. Brother Mark and Sister Susie, they're hurting in the hospital right now. We're sending Daimoku to them. We want them to get well soon. Never give up. Every moment is an opportunity to practice. Simply begin again. No judgments, no self-criticism. If you wake up today and you don't feel very good, that's okay. It's part of it. You wake up today, you feel great. Okay, that's part of it. And if you feel like you made a mistake, you got a little more angry at that person than you wanted to, that's okay. You woke up. In that moment of realization that, oh, I got angry. I didn't need to get angry. What am I angry about? And you simply begin again. No judgments, no criticisms. Moment by moment, we transform, we heal, we awaken. And as we start to see moisture in a dry soil, then mud, then water, then we know our beautiful lotus is blooming. It's coming. So, does this make you want to chant more or less? And everything that you just heard in the last hour, it's all included in chapter 10. This is all in chapter 10. So thank you guys very much.